Welcome to Emerging Franchise Brands, the podcast that introduces you to the visionary founders of America's fastest growing franchise opportunities. We'll also hear from industry pros as they share insights on what it really takes to achieve the elusive milestone of 100 plus locations. I am your host, Frank Fumi, founder of I9 Sports, and my 20-year journey from inception to acquisition has given me a unique perspective on how to succeed in franchising. Join me as we welcome today's guest. Before I start today's show, I have exciting news for founders, CEOs, and franchise brand presidents. Join me January 14th through the 16th, 2025 in Tampa for the first ever Emerging Franchise Brands live event, an exclusive opportunity designed just for you. It's my blueprint for success at every stage of franchising, one I wish I'd had, packed with real-world solutions and strategies to solve your challenges today and prepare for those you'll face tomorrow. Space is limited, so head over to emergingfranchisebrands.com to secure your spot today. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Emerging Franchise Brands podcast. On today's show, I have the founders of Scenthound, Tim and Jessica Vogel. Guys, how are you doing today?
Doing great. Thanks so much for having us today. Excited for the conversation.
I'm excited to be here.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I'm glad to have both of you here. I don't always get an opportunity to talk to the co-founders of a brand on the show here. So this is going to be exciting. I'm blown away. We started doing like our prep call about the numbers and how long you guys have been franchising. But before we get to all of that, share with the audience, if you would, what is Scenthound and how did you guys start this?
Jessica, take us away.
Okay. We provide monthly hygiene services for dogs. So we provide routine hygiene and wellness care, really, so dogs can live longer, happier, healthier lives.
All right. Wow. Okay. How did you come up with the name Scenthound? How'd that originate?
So, we were originally in the grooming business. So dog grooming has its own kind of paradigm and understanding around it. But we really believed that industry was really ready for some kind of evolution. And so, one of the big ahas was that, grooming was about haircuts, but not all dogs need haircuts, but all dogs need care. And so how did we kind of reframe this so it's about health, not about haircuts? And so as we were kicking around different name ideas, we really landed on what are the 5 core areas all dogs need care: skin, coat, ears, nails, and teeth. Scent, which is an acronym of the 5 core areas all dogs need care. And so we created this new concept called Scenthound. So you bring your dog in, you get basic routine hygiene care. And when you pick up your dog, you get a report card that actually shows them their health rating on skin, on their coat, on their ears, on their nails, on their teeth, and a bunch of other metrics too. But now I can actually understand, how am I doing as a dog parent? Is my dog healthy? Am I doing the right things to keep them healthy?
That's great. Now, you guys started the concept, in 2015?
That's right. Yep.
So how'd you start it? How'd you have this epiphany? What was the entrepreneurial seizure, so to speak, as Michael Gerber talks about in the E-Myth?
Absolutely. So, we originally, in 2005, made this big entrepreneurial leap and decided that the pet industry was really an emerging area. We fell in love with our dog. And so we started kind of in mobile pet grooming is where we started out. There was a whole bunch of problems with that around scalability and profitability. And so we made the decision to kind of try to figure out how to create a really healthy business in this space. We then moved to doing retail grooming salons where we could do some in-house training and stuff like that. And while we were doing that, we had a fleet of mobile trucks. We had a couple retail locations. And I remember the moment, actually, there was an aha moment. I was walking our dog in our neighborhood. One of a new neighbor had just moved in down the road, and he was out walking his dog also. And so we ran into each other, started talking. He asked me what I did. I said, I own a grooming business. He's like, oh, I would take my dog. My dog just doesn't need grooming. And he had a Labrador retriever. And I actually remember looking at his lab, and his lab's knuckles were disfigured because he hadn't cut the nails on a regular basis. And I could smell his lab's ear infection. And I was like, this guy's a really good guy. He clearly loves his dog. He clearly has the means to take care of his dog. He just doesn't know. He just doesn't know what he needs to do. He doesn't know about it. And I was like, is there a place for this guy? Because grooming is really about all the haircut dogs out there. And so we started researching it and digging into it, and there was just no place for normal everyday dog parents to fast and easy and affordable way to get the basic routine hygiene their dogs need to keep them healthy. And some of that real basic stuff can extend their life, can significantly reduce vet bills. There's a whole bunch of benefits from just the basic routine stuff. That was the impetus for Scenthound.
Okay. And so, Jessica, where do you come into play in this whole thing with the concept?
Well, we started this together from the beginning. And so my background is in branding. So I've always taken on that side of the business, the marketing, the branding, kind of developing the brand's identity. And we iterated several times. We started, in 2005 in the pet industry, as the mobile grooming business, as Tim mentioned. And then we opened our first brick and mortar in 2010. And this concept then really evolved, like he mentioned, and we opened our first Scenthound location in 2015. So we've gone through several different brands over the years. And so I've really had a role in creating those brands and building a brand that reaches the marketplace in the way that we need it to. We're really educating a marketplace on what we do.
Awesome. So is Scenthound strictly a brick and mortar, or is there a mobile component to the business?
Yeah, so it's 100% brick and mortar, inline retail, 1,000 square feet, grocery store, errand intensive shopping centers. Since then, one of our employees bought our mobile business and is still out there successfully running it. But we really wanted to focus on the core business that we were franchising.
Okay, so tell me about this defining moment of franchising. So you're running your business in 2015, and a couple years in, what happened? Yeah,
so we had opened a couple retail grooming shops. We had tested this new Scenthound concept. We learned a bunch of stuff. We opened another Scenthound location, redesigned the layout. We went through hundreds of experiments, opened our third location, and retrofit our 2 grooming salons to be Scenthounds. And I remember it was like we really believe like the scientific method, like hold all your variables consistent, change one, see what the outcome is. So we tested different membership models, packaging, different kinds of ways to bathe, deliver the service, flow patterns in the centers, on and on and on. And I was actually talking to one of my friends, and I was like, man, we're tweaking this. He's like, Tim, I think it's good enough. You should think about scaling this business. You've done so much work on this. And, I was kind of in that tinkerer mindset. And I finally backed up and I was like, you're right. We have a really great business. So that was kind of one piece of it. The other piece of it was we actually had another aha moment. And the aha moment was we're actually a data business, because we're actually capturing the health data of these dogs every single time they come in. And so we could have opened another 5 of these and had an amazing lifestyle. But looking at it through the lens of like, oh, we're actually creating a new category and we've got access to a lot of data, we started thinking about, well, if we want to be a data business, if we really want to pioneer something, we've got to scale this. And so that's when we started doing research on all of the different ways you can scale a business. And quite honestly, franchising wasn't our first choice. We were very hesitant to go into franchising because of all the horror stories we heard about franchising, because there's some bad actors in the franchising world. There's just these narratives out there.
Sure.
But as we dug into it further and further and got really kind of clear on what was important to us, franchising kept coming back as the best option for us. For example, having a business owner in that community caring for those dogs was really important to us. The entrepreneurial journey. I love the entrepreneurial journey. Helping people take the entrepreneurial journey in a de-risked way was really important to us. Capitalization, using other people's money to fund this thing versus bringing in a big one big partner, distributing that and having them all business owners that are bringing their capital into this. So those were some of the key decision points around franchising.
Sure. Well, franchising is...
And really, I think about, just to jump in, I think it boils down to amplifying our impact in the quickest way that we could. We're really trailblazing a new market space in dog wellness through our model. And so how could we get to that scale and really offer our services and make them accessible to as many dogs out there as we can?
Yeah. Well, when it comes to franchising, it's not all roses, right? What were some of the thoughts that you had that were maybe had you hesitant to franchise? I think it's important that the audience hears this.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest concerns is just the numbers around franchising as far as the brand lens goes. You see a lot of these brands scale to a certain size, typically around 50, somewhere in there, and stall out, right? And I was trying to
Right.
understand, like, kind of, I don't have the numbers handy now, but there's 600, something like 600 brands that enter this the franchising world every year, and 600 that fail, or something like that.
Well, it's about 400 that start every year and about 400 that go out. Of course, it's not the same 400, but yeah, you're right. It's about 400 that start and 400 leave. We have 4,000 franchisors or so, somewhere between 4,000 and 5,000 franchise companies, which is the same number that there were when I started my franchise journey in 2003. So yeah, we haven't gotten anywhere.
Yeah, and so that was alarming, right? And so then we started to like try to understand better why, like what was going on there. And one narrative I have is that a lot of franchise brands who have founders who have some success in their businesses use that capital to then go out and start franchising. It's the franchise sales that really allows the ability to grow the infrastructure. I sell a couple of franchises, I can hire the next employee. And what I believed at the time was a lot of these franchise brands are so focused on sales that they're not actually building the right infrastructure to support their franchisees. And they stall out where it's like, all of a sudden I've got a whole bunch of unhappy franchisees and I've got to pause and figure that out. And then I've got to bring in more capital to get that solved. And so one of the choices we made very early before we actually started franchising was I didn't want to be undercapitalized going into this. And so being a part of an entrepreneurial community down here, I went out to all of my entrepreneurial friends and I did a friends and family raise. Okay. And I said, look, I'm going to start a franchising. We need this much capital because I want to be really top heavy employee-wise going into franchising so that not only are we selling franchises, we're spending a lot of time building infrastructure, building systems, putting the right technology in place. And I think one of the reasons we've had such success at continued growing through that 100 mark in such a quick fashion is we spend a lot of time and we have a lot of people on board to build the infrastructure so that we've got happy franchisees when we get at this stage. We don't have to pause and go back and fix a bunch of problems.
Tim, if you had to give advice to somebody that was going to franchise their concept, regardless if it's a brick and mortar or a service-based business, what would you tell them on how much money they should have before they franchise their brand?
That's a really hard question to answer because every brand has slightly different needs, but it's millions. It's not hundreds of thousands, it's millions. So, and I think the game's continued to change as we've seen private equity and franchise sales organizations and all these other players come in to this community. That number goes up because the barrier for entry keeps going up a little bit higher, a little bit higher, a little bit higher. So I would say probably a minimum of 5 million would be my guess to really get a brand going in the right way. And that seems like an outrageous amount of money, but I think that's kind of the minimum.
Okay. I think that's, it depends on the brand. I think it's a very high number, but I think that if you really want to be, extremely conservative, making sure you have plenty of cash, sure. But again, it depends. I don't think a service-based brand needs to have anywhere near that capital, but at the same time, it definitely is not the $250,000 that you hear consultants talk about.
No way. And it depends on the infrastructure that you're really trying to put in place for your franchisees. And I've just seen, even in the 4 or 5 years that we've been doing this, the landscape is continuing to change in a competitive way. And, I talk about like FSOs and stuff like that.
Sure.
The amount of marketing dollars spent just to attract the right potential franchisees has gone way up. It's gotten much more competitive in that space. Right. So I think there's unique challenges continuing to come into the franchising space.
Would you both agree that one of the ways we can combat it by going into franchising is making sure that we have at least a couple of company-owned locations that are cash flowing so that we don't have to sell franchises just to keep the lights on? And that allows us to at least be able to breathe and not, need an FSO that's going to come in and say, hey, I'm going to sell 40 franchises in the first year, whether you're ready or not.
Totally.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And not only for that reason, but also for the reason that you need to prove out the model and you need a place to try things out and figure out what works and what doesn't work and really kind of have that test kitchen to make sure that as you're scaling and becoming a franchise system, that what works and you've been able to do the testing that's appropriate.
Yeah, that's a good point. Before we get too far down on the show, I think we need to let the audience know what kind of numbers we're talking about for Scenthound. You guys are an emerging franchisor only because based on the amount of time you've been in franchising, since you started franchising in good old 2020. But I understand you have 108 franchises open with another 172 in development. That is absolutely enormous. That would be 280 franchises. Jessica, how in the world did you guys do it?
Yeah, we're very, very proud of that, actually. And, just in July, a couple months ago, we opened our 100th location, which was a really big milestone for us. It's a big milestone in the franchising industry, as you well know. I think that it was really a concept that we brought to the market at the right time. We figured it out. Like Tim said, we did a lot of pre-work, right? So we started in the pet industry, in the grooming industry specifically in 2005. And so we spent a decade before we even arrived at this concept, figuring out the industry, figuring out the model. We really put in the pre-work before we got to the point where we decided to start franchising. And then we figured out the model. And as Tim mentioned, then we invested in a team and built the infrastructure before starting to franchise. So we put in a lot of work ahead of time, which is, I think, how we were able to have the foundation to grow at that scale.
It's very consistent with some of the founders that I talk to that have an enormous amount of success is that they did the stuff that was the ugly stuff first. They did all of the systems and processes and hiring ahead of time. It wasn't the fun, I'm going to go ahead and sell franchises first. It's like, these are the things that you need to do. You have to plant the seeds. You just can't start harvesting.
What's even interesting about that is we thought we did a lot of that. And as we got to that 50 mark, 25 mark, 50 mark, we took things, I specifically, personally took things for granted that because it was natural for me, I understood it inside and out, that the franchisees didn't.
Like what? So, give me an example.
Yeah, so like the employee journey.
Okay.
Really understanding the employee journey, like here's how it works, guys. And it just wasn't getting done in the way that I did it. Like we weren't leading high performing teams. We weren't promoting from within. We didn't drive the right culture. And I was like, I told you guys, this is what we need to do. And then I realized, well, actually, that's an innate skill I have. And I need to go back and reverse engineer something that's innate to me. And so that was a big aha moment for me, which is now we've created these maps, step by step, how you source, how you interview, how you onboard, how you do daily huddles, how you actually drive culture, how do you instill the value system? Like all of these kinds of things had to be reverse engineered so that we could hand deliver it to the franchisees so they could execute on it in a more consistent way. And so you think you know it, and I think it's probably the case for most, you think you know it, and then you actually get on the battlefield and you realize, okay, we've got a lot of stuff to clean up and do better.
Sure.
So even with that early investment, even with that thoughtfulness in it, you get out there and you're like, oh crud, this actually isn't delivering exactly the way I need it to deliver. And so there's this iterative process and I believe that iterative process should go on forever and ever and ever. So continuing to refine, learn, refine, and that feedback loop and improvement loop should continue to go.
Sure, and it never ends.
Never ends.
Constant.
It doesn't. And, I think specifically in franchising, and when you asked earlier what was daunting about franchising, I think one of those things is the brand and brand consistency between all the franchise locations, right? Because we've got a lot of different business owners out there who are independent thinkers and entrepreneurs who are operating Scenthound locations. And so I think it's really, really critically important that the brand plays a big role in that, and that brand consistency is ever more important in a franchise system.
Yeah. Jessica, sometimes I feel like in franchising early on, we're like, herding cats of all of our franchisees. I could not imagine having 108 franchises open in such a short period of time. How have you guys been able to maintain a brand of consistency on top of the scale that you've been able to create in such a short time?
I think that having me involved in the business with my background, I had a long career in the creative industry, specifically working in branding and marketing. So I think that we were at a huge advantage, honestly, having my expertise in this area. It's a large investment that an organization needs to make in brand and in branding. And a lot of small or emerging businesses don't have that luxury. So I think that was a real advantage for us. And I think it helped us build the foundation for this really professional brand that had a strong brand presence, just kind of having my expertise on the team.
How I translate that, it's you knew who you were, right? You knew what your brand represented. You knew what the company was, who your audience was, what you were trying to accomplish, right?
Very much so. We actually went through, and I did this in my career for other companies, but we went through, and this happened many times in the Scenthound journey, but we really went through a process, which is kind of a deep dive to help articulate our vision, our mission, our values, kind of the pillars of our brand, and distill down kind of all the different things that come from a brand, and knowing who you are as a brand and having that at your core of your everyday activities and all the decisions that you make, which we very much do and kind of execute on, is completely the core of a brand. If you're not sure who you are, there's no way that you can express to a marketplace who you are. So you have to know who you are first and build a brand on that.
That's probably part of the reason why, Tim, going back to what you said earlier, why 400 franchisors quit each year. There's a number of reasons why. I think it would be a disservice unless we kind of close the loop on that, and I'd love to get your take. I certainly have a few opinions on why there are so many franchisors that stop franchising. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think, a good business model, a successful business doesn't always translate to a scalable business. Mm-hmm. And so what are the key features of scalability, right? So the ability to repeat it at scale. And so it might be cult of personality. It might be a very unique skill set. So really understanding, do I have the components of scalability in place? That's kind of one of them. Mm-hmm. And then do I have the mechanisms to deliver that consistency? Do I have the mechanisms to maintain accountability around integrity of the brand and the integrity of the service, integrity of the product, whatever those kinds of things are? So it's probably not a terribly clear answer, but I think understanding what are the scalability features within your business and being able to then take those to market.
Yeah, because if you have a company that you franchise and you've only done it once, that's not really scalability. But in order to franchise it, you have to be able to effectively have people do this, of course, multiple times, of course,
in multiple markets, in multiple cultures. And there's a whole bunch of things there. And so do you have the right practices in place? Like culture is one of those. Culture is a consequence of practices. Right. So, when we talk about brand, our belief is people aren't really catching on to our mission, our vision, our values, that stuff, until they're making fun of you for bringing it up so much. Like that moment someone's making fun of me, I'm like, it's starting to catch. Great, that's success for me, right? So we do a daily huddle. We have practices in place where we every huddle in every location, and even in the corporate team by every team, we recite our North Star. We recite one of our pillars. We do something called core kudos, where we catch people doing things right and bring it back to one of our 5 core values, and then we document that. So there's these practices that really fit into scalability and repeatability that are super important.
Would you share what the core values are of the company?
Yeah, so our 5 core values, I've got a document right here with all of them listed out.
I bet you do.
and everyone's got a laminate. Every center's got a poster on the wall in their huddle space. But dog first. So we advocate for the health and wellness of every single dog. Bring love, make a difference, 1 pack, and seek growth.
All right.
And let me just jump in, because I think scalability is critically important, and maybe an answer to your question that things haven't been thought through, systems and processes haven't been thought through in the right way for scalability, which is perhaps going back to your question of why franchises might fail. I think another really important factor is the franchise partners being values aligned with the organization. So we're a mission-driven organization. Tim just talked about our values. We have a North Star that's we enrich the connection between people and their dogs. Our mission is to provide routine hygiene and wellness care so dogs live longer, happier lives. And we actually really put a lot into that. And so we've gone out and we've recruited franchise partners who believe in our vision and our mission and our values and are very aligned with us. And I think that's the only way to have success in a franchise system, is if everyone is aligned and marching to the same drummer at the very core.
Sure. Well, that is certainly a quick way of failing in franchising, is picking the wrong people,
Yeah.
Because even if you pick the wrong people, first of all, as a franchisor, you're not going to want to keep doing this if you've picked so many of the wrong people. If you sold too many too soon to the wrong people, then you're definitely not going to survive it. I think besides the execution of it, what I've noticed from interviewing so many people also is the reason why franchisors quit. It's because the franchisor didn't make the transition from being in the business they were in to being a franchisor. Like if you still thought you were in the dog wellness space only.
Yeah, totally.
We've had a big education on franchising in the last 5 years.
Oh, I bet. Oh, we get absolutely beaten with a stick, right? We're going to get hit if we don't learn that lesson. I think that's why so many of franchisors quit when they think they're like still in the restaurant business because they own a restaurant. It's like, no, you're no longer in the restaurant business. You're in the business of making franchisees successful in a business that just so happens to, have this theme or this restaurant.
I think it's a really great point. I think that's very much the case. It's a completely different business from the business that you were in before.
Right.
And so you've got to be able to make that transition and just be aware that you're starting a whole different kind of business than what you were operating before.
What about you guys are one of the first franchisors, founders that I've interviewed that is still emerging based on time, but not emerging based on numbers. Why do you think 84% of all franchisors don't get to 100 units? I know, Tim, you mentioned the 50 and they kind of fizzle out, but why do you think so many don't get there?
Yeah, I think we've spoken about a lot of those things. Like, look, one of the things that in my research and really understanding franchising was don't get the wrong franchisees in the beginning. The problem is you don't know until you know, right?
Right.
Like every franchise system has a slightly different profile, right? Your avatar might look different for one brand versus another. You might need this kind of person for that or that kind of person for that. So that's one thing. And then you really understand kind of as you run the business what the real avatar is, what versus what you imagined the avatar to be, right? And so I think one of the things is like you have to adapt really darn quick. So you're gonna go out and get the people that you think are the right partners. You're going to find a percentage of them are not the right partners. You need to then adapt to say, okay, how do I learn from this as quickly as possible and change it while dealing with the pressures of, I got to make the next payroll, right? I got to pay for that. So I'm trying to bring in revenue. We took care of some of that pressure there. And so I think that's kind of one of the big reasons. And I think the last part of that is the wrong people, you need to help them find the next thing, right? Like how do you get them to a place that, like how do you turn that center over to someone that's going to be the right person instead of subsisting in that and trying to battle through that. So that's a big part of it. I think not clearly understanding the pillars of your scalability, like what actually makes your model, what actually makes you money. Like, and I think a lot of people misunderstand, just like I misunderstood, hey, the employee part's not the hard part. The employee part is the hard part.
Right.
I just happen to be really good at it, right? But it is the hard part, period, across all businesses. So how do you put a system in place to help support people to be successful on those pillars of scalability? And then I think clearly articulating your why and getting people aligned with your why and your values so that people can join. Because I'm fired up every morning to come in because I really care deeply about what we do. Mm-hmm. If I didn't have that juice injected into the system, this would be awful. Right? It would be awful for anybody.
Yeah.
So you got to have the juice that gets you, like I always say, the entrepreneurial journey isn't from here to success. The entrepreneurial journey is like here, then awful, then great, then terrible, then awful, then great. And it's this crazy crooked line to get you there. Uh-huh. And so celebrate your wins and then get back to your values and whys when you're in those hard times so that you can weather those peaks and valleys.
Smart. What about your franchisees themselves? If you have 108 that are open, I'd like you to think about the personality of your first 8, and now think about the most recent 8 franchises that have joined. Number 101 through 108. How do they differ?
I actually don't think they differ all that much, would be my answer. I think personality profile wise, we're a couple of those initial few, probably not the right candidates or profiles for operating a Scenthound? Possibly. But I think that we've actually known very much who we are from the very beginning. And I don't think it's a hugely different profile of who we've brought in. I think there's been learnings. I think the number of units that we've awarded has potentially changed, and our thinking around that has shifted. I think in the very initial part of looking for franchise partners, we were looking for dog people. I don't think that's what I think we ended up with franchise partners who were very much people and business people. I think it was an initial mistake that we were looking for kind of dog people first in who we were searching for as franchise partners, when this is really a business about people, and it's also about dogs, but they couldn't be just dog people. They also had to be business people and people to run this business well.
Sure. We all, I think we all do that. I felt in my experience, my first, dozen or so were risk takers. They won't take a chance on me, where, once I got over 100, it was people that were, they were a little more risk averse. They definitely wanted to see that there was more systems and processes in place. Those folks never would have joined me in the very beginning. Yeah,
I think that's fair to say. That's definitely fair to say. And we're just kind of tipping into that new landscape. We've just hit 100, a couple months ago. So we're just kind of tipping into that new landscape. And I think that will very much be the case. Our early adopters, so to speak, were very much so more willing to take the risk. I just do really think that the fundamental, in terms of the fundamental personality, I think that we knew who we were then, and we know who we are now. And I don't think that's changed. And so I do think that the overall type of person is values aligned in the same way that they were then and now. That's fair. Jessica, it sounds to me, you guys definitely had a leg up than a lot of franchisors that start, in that many of us don't know totally who we are when we start franchising. We think we know, but we quickly find out, no, we need to make an adjustment and pivot who we are in order for the model to work. But you guys agreed, and we did the hard work ahead of time.
I mean, my favorite saying is, we're an overnight success that took us 15 years to achieve.
Exactly. Tim, okay, how did we get to, we have 108 that are open, but we have 172 in development. We're talking multi-unit franchises that haven't opened yet. Kind of walk me through how we're getting to 280 franchises.
Yeah, so we really are a multi-unit brand because of how we've put our employee career path in place. So really, you start with this as a Centech or a member associate, with a career path to becoming a manager or an area manager. So our very best franchisees, their area managers and managers all started at the ground level with them. And so because we've got this built-in career path, because we actually make our own technicians, you need to give them an opportunity to grow with you. So you're running our system for the first year, you're going to have actually too many trimmers. So you need to open up your next location to give an assistant manager opportunity, and that assistant manager an opportunity to be a manager. And that's part of what creates such a sticky environment for this employee journey, and part of what we reverse engineered to really create that model. So we've actually got a couple franchisees already with 5 units opening and opening more. We've got a couple 4-unit franchisees already. So a lot of that number is multi-units where people are developing. And we typically, a sweet spot for us is either a 3 or 5 pack unit, right? So, and the kind of one other thing I would say is my experience with running Scenthounds is it's easier to run 3 than it is to run 1. And it's because of the depth of the bench on staffing, because it's all about people at the end of the day. And so we make the territories that you can buy have to be contiguous so that you can actually move employees around from center to center to fill in those gaps. But if I've got one location and I have 2 people call out in a day, and then all of a sudden I'm like, I got to cancel appointments, creates a bad customer experience, versus, hey, employee X, can you go over to location Y today and help support us over there? That actually smooths things out and makes your life much easier. And now you've got multiple locations building skilled technicians, building managers, and then the cream rises to the top within these centers. Why we have such successful multi-units happening out there right now.
Do franchisees have to be employees first? Do they have to be techs or managers before they can buy a franchise?
No, we don't require that. We do have a contingent of franchisees that what we really recommend is their very first hire is their future area manager. So go hire a better, more capable person that's got the experience. They then manage that first location. We bring in, and then they run that career path system that then they can replace themselves and then go open the second location and then get a manager in there, and then they're overseeing multiple. And that's really the system we're running for the multi-units.
It's like being a Major League Baseball team with a farm system.
Exactly right. Right. Now, some of them want to go and run it themselves. I love that. That's my preference.
Okay.
The reality is, in my opinion, so I should say in my opinion, there's no such thing as an absentee business. I have not seen it in the entrepreneurial world successfully. Maybe it happens, not in my experience. So someone says, hey, I just want to kind of hire someone and let it run. That's not going to work. You have to be engaged in that business, period. You've got to be engaged. It is your business.
Right.
It is your livelihood. It is your capital. You have to be engaged. So that's a strong belief we have.
No one's going to care as much as you.
Yeah, that is a huge difference. But anytime you hear somebody say, oh, the business completely, absentee of the owner being involved in any way, run, don't walk, right?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Jessica, what about from the marketing and branding? I mean, clearly you guys knew who you were from the very beginning, but how has it evolved in just the past few years to where you are today? What's
it's evolved a lot. It's evolved a lot, actually. We are truly in our model creating a new category of dog care, really around this routine hygiene and wellness space. So that being said, we've had this evolution and we started in traditional grooming. We consider ourselves very different from traditional grooming. We're very focused on hygiene and wellness, health and wellness. And not on kind of the aesthetics of traditional grooming and making dogs look pretty. Well, there's definitely a place for that. That's not our focus. And so there has been an evolution, and we're still in an evolution of how we market to the marketplace, because we've kind of stepped our way away from the grooming terminology and kind of the concept of grooming. And it's a transition, because if you create a new category and you're, really kind of trailblazing this new market space as we are, you've got a whole marketplace to educate on what you're doing and why they need your services, right? So there's 90 million dogs in the US. A lot of those dog parents don't think that their dogs need grooming in the traditional sense. So we have, kind of set out to educate the marketplace, and that's through marketing, right? So marketing our services, part of that strategy is to educate the marketplace on the importance of what we do in the overall health and wellness of their dog. So it's been an evolution, because we started kind of with grooming language because that's what people understood, and that's how we could reach the audience that was existing out there. We're in a transition though, and it's still going, and there'll be a tipping point at some point where everyone understands the monthly hygiene services is, of course, what you do for your dog. It's just the norm, right? Because it should be, because all dogs need the care that we provide, at least on a monthly basis. So it's this evolution of our brand and kind of our messaging to the marketplace, moving away from that traditional grooming concept into this monthly hygiene services and wellness care.
What's been the biggest challenge for you being such a pioneer in this sector?
I think it is that education, that we're kind of educating a marketplace one dog parent at a time, right? In our centers. I think that is the biggest challenge, that people don't know that their dogs need the services that we provide, or they don't know where to get it, easily and affordably and conveniently. And that's the service that we provide, and we're kind of, check the box for them. But first we have to educate them on that this is what your dog needs.
Awesome. Guys, I'd love to know, what is the long-term vision for the company?
We've actually got a really big vision. And in the way I would think about our business, you bring your dog in every month, if not oftentimes every week. We're evaluating their health and actually identifying areas of opportunity. We ultimately want to know your dog better than you know your dog through collecting data, so that we can hyper-personalize and curate solutions for you, the dog parent, to just create the easy button so you can be an amazing dog parent without having to know all that stuff or worry about all that stuff. And so we will continue to build out an ecosystem around this, what I'd call is really kind of this evaluation system that we have, so that we can continue to personalize and curate better and better solutions that 100% relate to your dog's health and wellness and longevity.
Jessica, what are your thoughts?
Tim is definitely more of the visionary than I am. I make stuff happen, and I make sure that things stay on track, and I support the vision that he just laid out. I mean, I very much that I believe in the vision very much. I think the vision is big. I think what we're doing is super, super exciting. It's what everyone here on our team is jazzed about every day, that we're really changing a marketplace and changing behaviors of dog parents and their approach to how they care for their dogs. So that's big, right? We've got this really huge, wide open space of routine hygiene, preventive wellness care that isn't being addressed in the marketplace currently. We've got a lot of opportunity, and it's just a fun and exciting place to be.
What about long-term? Is this a legacy business for you both, or do you see yourself taking this only so far and riding off into the sunset and selling this to private equity or something like that?
I think about kind of how long we've been on this journey, and I think about kind of the arc of life, and kind of we're up here where things are getting more complex, getting busier. I think at some point, look, we've got a big vision and we want to be involved in this for a very long time. Mm-hmm. At some point, though, we'll continue to bring in, high quality players to allow us to be more strategic, to be less in the day-to-day operation. That probably involves bringing in partners, capital partners who have kind of unique skill sets and access to the right players to help us build out that C-suite team and really help us take it to that next level.
Sure, that's smart. What about when you're talking to prospective franchise owners? I'm curious, Tim, about when you're giving them advice or telling them during that due diligence period, what do you warn them about? Because you just don't want to sell it to anybody.
Yeah, I talk about the employee journey. A great employee journey creates a great customer journey, creates a great business. And so when we talked about kind of focusing on dog people, that was absolutely wrong. This is a people business. So it's about we're really a training and development company.
Right.
That's one way to think of it. We're training and developing great people, great employees. And there's a lot of lifting to that. Social media has changed kind of what is necessary to train your employees on. So engagement, how to interact with people. Those are things that we have to spend more time when you're bringing on new employees. So I warn the potential franchisees that this is about building high performing teams. This is really a people business, and it's developing intimate relationships with the dog parents that come into our centers. So if you don't love helping develop people, if you don't love interacting with people, run, don't walk away from this. Like you said, run away from this.
Right.
This is the place. This is not the place. If you want to come in and play with dogs every day and that's your main focus, this isn't the right place. Do you love people? Do you love developing people and happen to love dogs also? Then this is the winner.
That's great. So you're not in the dog business. You are in the people development business. That is a great way of looking at it.
Yeah. And it's the truth. And that was my big aha, which is we were successful because I'm really good at that and I'm passionate about that.
Right.
But we didn't articulate that really clearly and put the system together really clearly. We thought people just kind of knew how to do that. That was a huge oversight on our part.
Yeah. All right, Jessica, I got one for you since you're the marketing guru here. I can't get through the whole podcast without asking you, how in the world did you guys sell so many franchises? Because I know there's emerging founders out there that are listening to this or watching this, and they're going, I need to know, what exactly did they do? How did they sell that many franchises in such a short period of time? So can you give us a little bit maybe of the secret sauce on how you guys attracted that many franchises in such a short time?
I think it's our passion, to be honest. I think that we're timed right in the marketplace. I think what we're doing is really, really exciting. We're being category creators and really developing this whole new market space in this booming pet industry. Our timing is right. The pet industry has been exploding for decades now.
Sure.
And it's not slowing down. So we're in a really good position in terms of the industry that we're in. Health and wellness is another booming industry, and we're kind of at the juncture of both of those. So we're timed very well. People really understand the concept and they get it. And I think that we've really just built a great foundation. We've got the right people in, and we're passionate about what we do. Our team here at we call it our central office. That's SCENTRAL.
Nice.
It is really, really passionate. So I think the people that we brought in exude that passion. We're really authentic too. We're a really authentic group of people who are truly mission driven. We believe in our values. We believe in our mission. And when people come and they see that, it's attractive to be a part of that. We've got this really great vision of making routine hygiene and wellness care accessible to all dogs. And everyone here believes very much in the importance of what we do, how much it's needed in the marketplace. And they're passionate about building this brand and driving our business forward. And I think that people respond to that. So I think it's kind of market timing. It's the pet industry, and it's the team that we have.
How are most of the people finding you? You guys using brokers, franchise sales organizations? Are you selling franchises in-house? How are you guys doing it?
So the majority of our new franchisees are organic. A huge portion of them are referrals. So our franchisees are referring people to us. So you get someone in from a brand, they go to that brand's conference, they tell everyone about it. We get a lot more people from that brand. So that's one. We've had 7 employees buy franchises from us. Wow. So the believers are here, right? And they want to be a part of that. I actually think Jessica also sold herself a little short. Almost everybody who's come in said one of the key drivers for me coming in here is the brand. How clean our brand is, how well we articulated the brand, the positioning of the brand. So really that brand gave confidence right out of the gate when we were brand new, gave confidence that we had our stuff together and that we really understood what we were doing. And then I think social proofing too. Like in the very beginning, before I franchised, I did a lot of research and talked to a lot of people. I became friendly with a local franchise down here, Orange Theory Fitness. David Long has been very helpful. He actually joined our advisory board. Also, people are like, okay, some of these seasoned players, I want to be a part of this too. And that just helps it helps validation essentially. And also, it literally helps us become better because he's been there and done that. And so some of these advisors we have been super helpful for us too. So those are other key components to help us in our franchise recruitment process.
Well, speaking of recruitment, how many more franchise locations are there left throughout the U.S.? Yeah,
so we use one of the bigger players. I don't mean to put names out here, but one of the bigger players in kind of the data analytics around real estate and location. I think we came back with kind of around 1,200 A locations. So we're a pretty tight area. We're where people's biosphere is. So there's a lot of dogs out there. If we're in your grocery store, shopping center, what most dog parents do is drop off their dog. I'll mention Orange Theory because he's an advisor. Drop off their dog, go do their workout at Orange Theory, come pick their dog up and go home, or drop off their dog, go to the grocery store, go get their dry cleaning because it's a pretty quick service. And so there's a lot of available space out there. I think we're probably closer to like a haircuttery, supercut, something like that than we are some of the other places. Yeah.
Okay. Sweet. Well, guys, if someone was interested in learning more about Scenthound, where would they go?
They could go to scenthound.com is where they can find out more about the business. And they can find a location near them that lists all of our locations. And like we said earlier, we're in 22 states now, all over the country from coast to coast. So hopefully they can find a location near them.
Sweet. All right. I got one more question for you guys. I call it the franchise tip jar. I end every podcast with that because the franchise community is so generous with sharing of advice. So what advice would you give an entrepreneur that was aspiring to start franchising before they go diving in to franchising their company? What would you say, guys?
My kind of insight is probably a little more global than just franchising. It's more entrepreneurial. And I think as the leader goes, so goes the business. And I am a lifelong learner. As I've evolved personally, the business has evolved along with us. And so I think it's critical that you surround yourself with great people. You're constantly trying to become a better version of yourself. You're constantly learning. You're constantly curious and trying to constantly evolve yourself. I think if you can get that muscle really built, then I think it puts you in a significant advantage to other organizations.
Yeah, mine would come from the branding perspective, as expected, I guess. But I think that really, honestly, around brand, when executed correctly, can be the single most important asset, I think, especially for a franchise organization, because there are different business owners, and it's that much more important that everyone is brand aligned and that the brand speaks first for the system.
Great. Well said. Well, Tim and Jessica, thank you so much for being on the show today. I appreciate it. You guys have just blown away my expectations. I love the numbers, but more importantly, I hear how well you've got everything all buttoned up, and that puts a smile on my face too, because it's one thing to be able to sell a lot of franchises, but to have the real meat behind it. And you guys have got you guys got a winning formula here. I look forward to seeing you guys continue to grow.
Yeah, Frank, thanks so much for having us on. Really appreciated the conversation and appreciate what you do. I've listened to a lot of your podcasts, and it's part of my learning journey. So thank you for what you do.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. Well, thanks again, guys. Nice seeing you.
Thanks, Frank. So nice to meet you.
All right. Take care. Thank you for tuning into the Emerging Franchise Brands podcast. For additional insights, guest applications, and to stay connected, visit us at efbpodcast.com. The Emerging Franchise Brands podcast is for entertainment purposes only, and the views expressed do not necessarily represent those of Emerging Franchise Brands, its host Frank Fiume, or Emerging Franchise Group LLC. Any discussed franchise or investment opportunity requires thorough investigation, obtaining proper disclosure documents, and expert consultation before making any investment decisions. The podcast and its host do not offer professional advice or endorsements, and they hold no responsibility for actions, representations, accuracy, or consequential damages related to the podcast content.